Hello everyone, my name is Josh and this is Whimsical and Interesting Musings, and welcome to part 2 of my review of Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Now, before I left off, I had to cut my video slightly short because while I was recording, I kept glancing out the window because the point where I film from, it's usually facing a window, so the camera, which is my phone, is just behind a window, so I often look out the window, and that usually tells me when someone's coming up the drive and when to expect deliveries. So while I was recording part 1 of my Lord of the Rings trilogy, or Lord of the Rings Return of the King video, I ended up looking out the window and a delivery had arrived, so I had to stop the video discussion, pre-talk, to go out and get the delivery. And a lot's happened since then. As you can tell, I have actually shaved my head. And no particular reason why. I just basically wanted to try something different. And I'm really sorry for the lighting, by the way. Here, I'm just going to move the camera slightly so you can just see me. Sorry about that. But yeah, to kind of jump off where we were the last time, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli had just gotten to the Army of the Dead, and now they've just boarded one of these wild men vessels in order to go to Gondor to stop the goblins and the orcs and the Nazgul from taking over Minas Tirith. And while this is all happening, Eowyn has decided to disguise herself as a Rohirrim soldier, and her, along with Merry, decide to join the battle because she feels kind of a bit undervalued because her uncle, Theoden, thinks that she can't take care of herself, when in actuality she bloody well can. And she's proven that by taking on a Nazgul dragon. She literally decapitates this damn thing with a few whacks of her sword. That's badass. So yeah, what were you saying again, Uncle Uncle Theoden? Like, did you just say she couldn't handle herself? Because looks like to me she bloody well can. But yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent about the fight scene. The actress who plays Eowyn actually did some of her own stunts. And while they were in rehearsing the fight scene between her and the Witch King of Angmar, she actually was totally taken aback. Like, you literally see the fear in her eyes as she's doing this scene where she has to basically it's kind of like a metal ball and a chain with spikes on it, and it really is an intense sequence. It really does give you this impression that, oh my god, is she gonna end up getting killed, trying to fight this guy? But luckily, Merry is on her side, and she manages to injure the Witch King, in which, before she decides to get the upper hand, the Witch King goes, "Fool, no man can kill me, die now." And then when he gets injured, Eowyn just basically takes off her helmet and she says the most badass line. She goes, "I am no man," and then she just shoves the sword into his face. And I thought, that's badass. Like, if you want a really good feminist moment where you just go, "Fuck yes," then and that's one moment I would definitely say is really badass and really up there with some of my favourite, favorite, kick-ass moments. And yeah, that scene is pretty amazing, and it ends with Aragorn and Legolas going to battle. Legolas being a badass as usual, taking on the army single-handed. He takes out an entire elephant of Easterlings at one point, single-handedly, and there's even this wonderful joke at the end of it where he fires 2 arrows into an elephant's forehead and he just rolls off the trunk. He just slides off the trunk like he's at Thorpe Park or something, and he just does this very badass look like, "Huh," and then Gimli just gives him this look and he just goes, "That still only counts as one." Oh, I love Gimli and Legolas in this film. This film trilogy, if nothing else, if this entire trilogy was total rubbish, one of the things that actually was the saving grace was Legolas and Gimli. Even though I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy is fantastic, These two really do make it something special. Like the fact that they're just these, because there's always this history in fantasy stories, not just with the history of Middle Earth, but with the history of most medieval fantasy stories, like D&D, for example, Dungeons and Dragons. There's always this history that elves and dwarves don't really get along, and you don't really know why, because even though they're of different races, they have a lot of things in common. They prioritize battle, and they have various different resources that if they had their own society and if they were to come together, they would actually get along very well, and they'd actually have a very harmonious society. But it's because dwarves think they're snobs or something, that, you know, they can think to themselves, oh, they prioritise pretty looks and wisdom, but we prioritise craftsmanship and, you know, all these other things. So it's actually quite really nice and really lovely that they actually became friends. And to go off on another tangent with the Rings of Power, there's a dwarf and elven duo that actually are very good friends that I actually found were the heart and soul of the show for me. If nothing else, I thought those two characters were really well fleshed out, and I really felt like their relationship was very well explored in this new series of the Rings of Power. So look out for that when you do eventually tackle Rings of Power. I will be talking about the Rings of Power, but I'll be doing more of an overview of it rather than an actual series by series review, because there is only one series of the show. I am actually really happy to announce that I'll be just doing the one series so far. But yeah, I'm looking forward to tackling that. But moving on very quickly, Frodo and Sam are kind of in a very interesting position. They are at this place. They're ascending the stairs, and they are in a pretty interesting position because Sam knows that Gollum is kind of very slowly starting to see them as, you know, they're just liabilities. I can get rid of them whenever I want. So Sam's on to Gollum when he hears that he's planning on luring them into a trap somehow, and Frodo is kind of still, you know, hopeful that Smeagol is in there. That's the name he got before he got turned into Gollum, before he got corrupted by the ring. But sadly, Frodo hasn't got his head on straight. Not only is he being corrupted by the ring, but he's also being corrupted by Gollum and his evil influence. So, yeah, lots of stuff is happening, including a bit of tension, a bit of, you know, friendship-breaking moments in the new trilogy. I'm sorry for the light, by the way, everyone. The light's really terrible today. Usually the light's really good, but for some strange reason, my phone's not really showing me the best light, literally. And yeah, I really do think this is one of the moments where I felt like they really did a good job at it. It really is weird, because a lot of people could make the argument that it's all, you know, Frodo's being a bit of an idiot, not believing Sam when he says, you know, this stuff's happening and all these other things. But if you look at it from Frodo's point of view, Gollum is the only one they really know, who knows where they're going, who's been to Mordor before, who knows how to get there. So if he gets frightened off, or if he gets pissed off with Sam to the degree where he will, you know, go off on his own and run away, that's it. Their goose is cooked as far as they're concerned. So from Frodo's point of view, I can see what he's doing from a strategic standpoint, but also I would believe my friend if he said, you know, oh, we have to keep an eye on this guy because he is very dangerous. He's planning on, you know, luring us into a trap or something. So the fact that he keeps on, you know, taking Gollum's side, even though he technically has every reason to kind of, you know, keep him on good faith because of what he's doing, it really is kind of a frustrating situation. But you do feel sorry for Sam in this situation, because he is actually trying to help his friend carry this burden. And another badass is Sam. He does a lot of great moments in this. He has a lot of great moments in this film alone. I mean, there's this one scene where Frodo gets captured by the spider Shelob, who is meant to be modelled after a trapdoor spider in New Zealand. And I'm a massive arachnophobe. I hate spiders. Whenever I see, whether it's a big spider or a tiny spider, I immediately get uncomfortable, and I really just want to. I just get my brother-in-law Daniel to help me out. Like, I'm that terrified of spiders. I hate them. I hated films like Eight-Legged Freaks and Arachnophobia. Arachnophobia was the worst. That was the one that really kind of got me, because there's a lot of close-ups of the spider's eyes and things like that. And I thought, oh no, can you stop showing that to me, please? And yeah, this entire um, um, sequence is very brutal because of how, you know, intimidating Shelob is. But what's really fantastic is that Frodo does hold his own, and he is able to fight back, and he's also even able to fight Gollum during the moments where he starts to make a turn. But he gets jabbed with Shelob's stinger, and he gets, you know, wrapped up cocooned in her web. And what's even worse, it looks like all hope is lost, but then Sam comes to the rescue with Sting and with the light Erindil. And if you are familiar with the Tolkien appendices, or better yet, the Silmarillion, the Silmarils, which are these 3 jewels, these 3 gems, which are basically the before days before the Rings of Power. These jewels were actually used to make that Erindil light, so it's actually quite interesting that something that was kind of like Sauron's ring, essentially, that drove a lot of people crazy and made a lot of people go mad with power and with greed, just is now, you know, the benchmark for saving Frodo's life and being his light in dark places when all other lights go out. But that's because it was created by the elves. It wasn't created by Sauron. It wasn't created by Morgoth, who is basically Sauron Zero. Or he's another villain that I think a lot of people should look out for. He's referenced in the New Rings of Power show constantly, so keep an eye out for that name when you hear it when you watch that show. But yeah, the Silmarils are created by the elves, so it's kind of this idea that it wasn't simply the objects themselves, it wasn't the special magic of the elves that was influencing this greed. It was just pure riches and pure, you know, pure evil. It was pure greed, pure human instinct that was influencing these terrible actions rather than an actual manipulative magical power. And of course, it's the same with the Arkenstone in regards to the Rings of Power, because the One Ring is meant to be infused with magical properties, dark magic more particularly. And it's the same with the Arkenstone, whereas with the Silmarils, it's not that simple of a case. So, yeah, it's actually quite interesting that the Silmarils actually helped to, you know, save someone's life, even though technically back before the days of even Frodo and Sam, it was often used as basically a tool for people to bargain, for people to, you know, betray each other, double-cross each other. It was a whole thing. So, yeah, that was another thing. But what I really love about this sequence is Sean Astin does an absolutely wonderful job in this moment of really kind of selling how hurt and how horrified and how sad he is at seeing his friend basically just... Because you'd be mistaken that when you look at him that he is dead, but he's actually stunned. But he actually thinks he's dead because his eyes are open, he looks very pale, and he literally feels like he's let his friend down. He's betrayed. He's kind of, you know, done the ultimate betrayal, which is, you know, not been there for him when he needed him, and that's something that really is quite sad. But then when he finds out through a second party of orcs that he's been jabbed with Shelob's stinger, he's able to go to their special stronghold at the foot of the mountain, and he's able to get Frodo back in a very badass display of him just basically being a one-man army. And that, to me, is really badass. That's literally on par with Arnold Schwarzenegger or Rambo, John Rambo in the First Blood series. Like, he's a one-man army in this one, and he's literally fighting all these orcs. But it's actually kind of a bit bad that all the orcs basically kill each other because one of them tries to get greedy or actually becomes greedy through, you know, having the mithril shard and them getting, you know, greedy over that. And I think that's very interesting that they all just kind of... Again, it wasn't something supernatural that was, you know, influencing their decisions. It was more them just being too greedy that made them, you know, want to kill each other. So that was actually kind of handy for Sam, because he ended up, just storming the gates and going, "Hi, honey, I'm home," and just killing a bunch of orcs. That's incredible. It's badass. And then they go to the foot of the mountain disguised as orcs, and they are basically getting tired, they're getting hungry, they're getting thirsty, but their supplies are very slowly running low. So they have nothing to eat, they have nothing to basically, keep them at bay for the foreseeable future. So for all intents and purposes, they are on their way out, literally. But then they're literally at the foot of the mountains, and they're trying to climb up the foot of the mountains so that they can get to the entrance to Mount Doom to destroy the ring. But Frodo just basically, collapses, and Sam tries to convince him, tries to give him the memory of the Shire, and that it's going to be spring soon, and everyone's, ready and happy. So you can actually feel it, can't you? Like you can recall the taste of food and all these other things. He says, "No, I can't. All I can see is Sauron, him, his eye, everywhere I go." And that really is kind of sad, that he basically has been carrying the ring so long that he literally cannot see anything but darkness. And that makes it really, strange to me, but it also makes it kind of sad, because it shows that Frodo used to be this very happy-go-lucky person who was hungry for adventure, hungry for companionship, but then it turned into literal dog shit, because he ended up, carrying this ring, which was the result of his uncle, his previous adventure. And it went completely and utterly, bad for him. So I think that was actually very sad, but it was a very wonderful moment. Of course, Howard Shore's music is fantastic in this film. Honestly, the entire trilogy, Howard Shore is a fantastic composer, and he is one of those composers who I definitely do cite as one of the best in terms of how he's able to capture a mood and a feeling with just a few arranged things. And I absolutely really love the music to Lord of the Rings. Whenever I think of Middle-earth, I think of this music. I think of, when I think of the world of Tolkien, I think of Howard Shore's music. No one else has been able to top it, in my opinion. So whenever I hear it, I always feel a sense of a chill. Even when I heard Howard Shore's music in Rings of Power, he does the opening title song, or the opening title music, and I absolutely felt a tremendous sense of nostalgia hearing him, and finding out that he did the music for that opening title sequence. It was incredible. I love it. So yeah, please check out Rings of Power, everybody. It's a fantastic show. I enjoyed it, at least. But yeah, I really would highly recommend it. But yeah, moving on to our previous team. Gandalf and everyone is in the Gondor throne room, and they basically are trying to figure out what they're going to do, because they've now lost Frodo. Frodo has literally lost sight of... He's literally passed beyond his sight, and they don't know what to do. So Aragorn makes the decision that, yeah, we basically have to get our armies together. In my own very common voice, I'm going to say, well, Aragorn says, let's get our armies. We've got a ton of armies here. We've got the Rohirrim. We've got the Gondor soldiers. Let's just pack them all together, and let's just ride out to the Black Gate, and let's just keep Sauron's eye fixed on us, and keep him blind to all else that moves. So they're able to do that, not before an extended scene where Aragorn is looking into the Palantir, and he confronts the Eye of Sauron once and for all, and he basically taunts him and says, "As long have you hunted me, long have I eluded you, and I'm going to basically show you that I'm better than you. I've got a massive sword in front of me, the sword of Elendil, the sword of the warrior whom you slay, and the sword of which you broke in half by stomping on it, and I'm going to beat you." And he basically said, Sauron basically says without words, "Oh, you think you're going to beat me, eh? Well, if you do, notice that your lover's going to die." So there's a great bit of back and forth between the two of them, even though technically most of it's wordless, and I just love that. I love that little bit of one-upmanship that they do, but it really is mostly silent, and it's really intimidating as well. But yeah, I love the build up to it, and I love the battle sequence where they go to the Black Gate, and Aragorn tries to say, you know, let the Lord of the Black Land come forth, may justice be done upon him. And in the extended edition, another rider comes out who is referred to as the Mouth of Sauron, and he is basically the guy who, if you were to meet him, you'd say, yeah, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near you, because he has very massive teeth and he has a really hideous grin, but he has no eyes, so you can't really tell if his grin is genuinely a happy grin or whether it's a sinister grin, so you really do kind of feel very creeped out just by them not showing his eyes, and I thought that was a very good detail. In the extended cut, they basically talk back and forth between him, and when Gandalf asks a question about Frodo, the Mouth of Sauron hands the Mithril shirt back to him, literally throws it to him, and says, you know, although he suffered greatly at the hands of his host, and by the way, Gandalf, he did. And that moment was like, hell to the no on Aragorn's part, and he takes out Mithril and he cuts the guy's head off. And he literally just says, I will not believe it. I will not believe it. And I thought that was just brilliant. But if you are watching the theatrical cut, it goes straight from them talking at the Black Gate to the gates opening and an entire army of orcs and goblins coming out. Whereas in the extended cut, the Mouth of Sauron comes out and that entire conversation happens. But Aragorn isn't finished yet. A lot of people, when he rides back to his main soldiers, he decides to rouse a speech in the soldiers, build up their morale and say, you know, oh, I see in your eyes the same fear that would strike the hearts of all men. And a day may come when the courage of men fails and we may forsake our bonds and forsake all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. This day we fight. And I friggin' love that moment. But another great moment that happens straight afterwards when when Sam and Frodo are in Mount Doom and they're outside in the battlefield, and Aragorn can feel Sauron's influence over him. He basically turns to his team and he just says in a very simple voice, you know, for Frodo. And then he just runs up to the army and he just goes full pelt into this army of orcs. Like, seriously, Aragorn is a badass in regards to him, you know, just running up and fighting these goblins. Because if that was me, I'd have to, you know, have a shield or something, like something big enough to pierce through the spears, or have the spears pierce through so I can just, you know, lend in a few whacks. But he didn't even go in with a shield. He just went in with his sword and he just, you know, whacked a few of them. And I thought, that's brave. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that. But that entire moment where everyone just, when he says for Frodo, he just runs up and then everyone just starts running. That's such a great moment. That's on par with a lot of people's versions of comparison is the scene at the end of Endgame where all the Marvel characters come out of those little portals and they all stand together and Captain America just goes, Avengers assemble. That's basically the 2003 equivalent of that, where you see all these characters, you know, come together and they're all fighting for Frodo. That's incredible. And it's so brilliant. It's so intense. And I absolutely love every single minute of it. It's very intense. Cutting back to that and them fighting Gollum on the top of the mountain, Sam and Frodo, it's just so exceptionally well done. And I definitely do think that this is the best climax of any fantasy trilogy ever, because to me, it ties up everything very nicely. And shimmying back quickly to the Rings of Power. I don't really want to say too much about the Rings of Power, but yes, this show is absolutely incredible. Not the show, sorry, I was going to jump quickly to a reference with the Rings of Power, but I realised it might be a little bit of a spoiler. So, this particular climax is really wonderful, and it just ties up everything very nicely. And a lot of people complain now that, oh, this film has too many endings, this film doesn't know when to shut up, this film needs to stop now because it's actually getting, you know, a little bit annoying. It never does to me. Seeing this film and seeing how all these characters basically all triumph over evil, and how, you know, each and every single story kind of, you know, gets wrapped up very nicely. Aragorn gets crowned king, and everyone else lives happily ever after. It's just so wonderful to see, and it really kind of gives you it. it's a reward to all the fans who've been following this entire time. Like, wouldn't you be pissed off if you never found out if Aragorn became king? Wouldn't it be annoying if you actually found out that, Frodo, you didn't see Frodo live on and write the Lord of the Rings and then go to the Grey Havens? Wouldn't that be a little bit unsatisfying? So that, to me, I think that's the perfect way to do it. I mean, yes, a lot of people can complain now that the other films are guilty of this problem where there's too many endings. But to me, there's never too many endings, especially if you've got a big story like this. I mean, the only one that I can draw comparison to, again, is the Marvel films, because they literally have to wrap up all these stories that they've redeveloped and they've added on to throughout the course of this one series. So to me, I think it's necessary with Lord of the Rings because it's such a big story and they're wrapping up all these different storylines at once. So it's actually quite helpful to have them wrap it all up at once. But this film's fantastic. I never get tired of watching it. I always dedicate a time out of the year to at least watch all 3 films in one go. And I never usually do that with films, and I never do that yearly. Usually I do that with books like Great Expectations or something like that. Like, I don't usually reserve time to actually revisit works, whether they be films or TV shows. Sometimes I'll watch a film that I really like on a whim, but sometimes I like to just dedicate once a year to just reviewing and revisiting Lord of the Rings trilogy, because they're that good they're that good of films. I think they're really fantastic. And Peter Jackson did an absolutely wonderful job with them. And this is coming from a guy who, when he got started, he was in New Zealand making these low-budget horror films with blood splattery, gore, and things like that, and very cartoony logic. He used to do a film about zombies that tear your head off, and there's a moment in the film which I reviewed called Brain Dead where a guy basically kills an entire horde of zombies with a lawnmower. And he went from that to directing Tolkien's magnum opus, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So think about that for a second. That's a very interesting thing to ponder. So to me, I think Peter Jackson did a very wonderful job. Him and his team of writers did an absolutely exceptional job with this piece. And I'd highly recommend it if you haven't seen it already. And if you haven't, where have you been? Like, this entire trilogy is an absolute masterpiece of visual storytelling and also really great spectacle cinema. It manages to kill 2 birds with one stone, which is it's managed to be this very wonderful, very kind of well-made film, but it's also a great spectacle piece in the sense that you've got all these wonderful set pieces, all these great special effects, a great cast, and these very wonderfully well-drawn characters that you literally feel like, wow, this film trilogy ticks all the boxes in a lot of different ways. And I think that's something that's really quite fantastic to me. So yeah, that's my review for The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King Part 2. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button now. And I've been Josh with WHIMS Cool and Interesting Musings. And what do you think of my new hair? I absolutely am. I'm very happy with it. I really am. It's a fantastic new step for me. I think I'm actually really worried how a lot of people are going to react to me having a shaved head, but I actually really like it. I just decided on a whim to go out and have my hair cut. My hair was growing and my beard was quite long, and when your beard's quite long and your hair's growing, it literally feels like you could literally have a ponytail attached. It's that long. I literally just thought, you know what, I want to see what it's like to be bald. Like, I just want to shave my head completely. I just want to shave my hair and, be just bald and give my beard a nice trim. So I just decided to go to the barber's that's just around the corner from where I live, which is right across from a Tesco Express. And I just asked the barber in there to just, can you just shave it all off? And he said, yeah, of course. And then he did it, and I was actually very pleased. It was one of those things where as soon as I asked it, I literally looked in the mirror and I thought, I hope you're doing the right thing, Josh, because this can look either really well on you or it can look really badly on you. So you got to kind of weigh it all up. But yeah, luckily it's been well received, and I'm very happy with the results. And you're going to see a lot more of me with a bald head now. So I hope you guys like it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day, everyone. This has been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings, and take care. Bye for now.